At the end of May this year, I saw the M VAVE FM1 on display at the Guangzhou Musical Instrument Fair. I was somewhat impressed at the time, because at this fair, new products easily catch your eye. Shortly after I returned, the product appeared on e-commerce platforms, so I bought one right away. It cost just over 300 RMB. My first impression upon unboxing: the packaging is very basic, a reasonably sturdy box, no cushioning inside, just a manual and a USB-C cable. The shipping carton did have a layer of foam, and given how small this device is, the chance of transit damage is very low. The product itself has a screen, 4 function buttons, 4 data knobs, 12 mode buttons, and 27 integrated rubber keys below. The knobs have no outer caps. They look like bare encoders with painted components. All knobs are stepped except the volume knob. On the back, the brand logo is printed, along with a power indicator. There is a USB-C port, a 3.5mm Midi jack, and a headphone jack. After testing, the Midi port follows the Type A standard. When I shake the unit, there is a slight rattle, which turns out to come from the power switch. It is a bit loose. That is not a big issue. On the back, there are 4 anti-slip pads, and a speaker on the lower right. Funny enough, when I briefly saw it at the fair, I thought the bottom vent was for cooling, and wondered how powerful it could be to meet its own heat dissipation. But that's not the case. Flip the switch, and it powers on. The default state is ready to play. Press any key, and the on-screen oscilloscope responds immediately. Turning the preset knob lets you quickly change patches. In fact, the FM1 is a 6-operator FM synthesizer, with a configuration very similar to a certain Japanese synth from the 1980s. M VAVE released a 37-key Midi keyboard last year that also had FM features. But on that device, the FM seemed more like a bonus. This FM1 removes the keyboard and keeps only that bonus. For me, that bonus is more fun than the original product. The data wheel on the FM1 lets you scroll through 128 preset sounds. Via the 3.5mm jack, you can quickly connect an external Midi keyboard and play it with this unit. Compared to the rubber keys, I personally prefer playing on a real keyboard. There is also a one-press save function. Hit it, and the next time you power on, the device returns to your current settings. However, this feature comes with a catch. The save button sits right next to the home button, so it's easy to press by accident. This instrument supports only one MIDI input channel, which you can assign in the global settings. The maximum polyphony is 12 voices, which is more than enough. These sounds are identical to those on certain famous Japanese synths, and I really have no complaints about the quality. Of course, the rubber keys are fine for playing on the go. To me, it feels more like an electronic kalimba. The FM1 also has a built-in effects chain, which adds effects to the FM tones. Very practical. There are 6 effects types, and you can freely reorder the chain. The FM1 even matches that Japanese synth in how cumbersome sound editing is. It's not very user-friendly. The upside is that, with the UI, it is a bit more visual. In edit mode, all 6 operators can be configured independently, but each time you switch operators, the parameters reset to page 1, while the operator on off toggle is on page 4, a bit inconvenient. The envelope parameters are also fully adjustable. The parameters provided are almost identical to that Japanese synth, and it even includes effects that the 40-year-old model lacked. I suspect its output sample rate is also higher than that vintage synth. The FM1 includes a 16-step sequencer. Enter sequence mode, press record, and your performance is recorded. Each note's duration is a 16th note by default, but you can adjust it with the rate knob. The manufacturer just released an update that fixes the issue of not being able to input rests. The Arpeggiator is simpler, pretty much the same as on other M VAVE products. Because the rubber keys are so small, it's easy to hit wrong notes when using the Arpeggiator. Also, for some reason, the latch mode occasionally stops abruptly, but again, I don't see that as a major issue. Connectivity is another pleasant surprise. The FM1 supports Bluetooth audio, Bluetooth MIDI wired audio and wired MIDI simultaneously, plus a headphone jack and built-in speaker. It offers just the right set of options. Let me give my final verdict on the FM1. I think the conclusion is clear. This is an incredibly good value musical toy. You could even use it as a professional instrument without any issues. It packs a one-to-one recreation of that classic FM engine into a handheld-sized device. Plus, it adds modern digital features that you would expect from a contemporary product. More importantly, in China, the price is fairly reasonable and competitive. At that price, you could also get a 37 or 49 key keyboard that are made in China. I have to say, Chinese-made electronic musical instruments offer incredible value worldwide. Finally, let me list the pros and cons in my view. First, the UI layout. The on-screen 2x2 grid does not always match the physical 4x1 knob arrangement, which can be confusing. Second, it supports limited MIDI control messages. For example, it doesn't recognize program change, so you can't switch presets via external MIDI gear. Third, toggling operators on and off within the edit screen is a bit cumbersome. Lastly, the sequencer still has a minor bug, but again, I don't think these are real problems, because the keyword is price. At this price point, I'd say none of the above really count as drawbacks. Everything else is a plus. At the end of this video, there is a 3-minute sound demo. That's all for this video. This is just a share of an interesting Chinese-made instrument. If you have watched my other videos, you know I am not a professional user. If you find this useful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next video, probably a few years later.
Thank